So this has a very light malt profile.
Very, yeah.
It's grainy, as you had mentioned before, so definitely sandwiches.
Mm-hmm.
An all-grain sandwich would be nice. You'd probably want to put something fairly mild in the sandwich, maybe a roast beef, chicken, something like that.
There would be a lot of foods that would overpower this beer.
Be a lot of foods that would overpower this beer.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so obviously the hop is also going to affect the perception of the flavor. We're really focusing on what this color of beer means in terms of food matching.
Okay.
And definitely, like you said, lighter foods, some light fish. You don't want to be having this with a light fish.
No.
So once again, very simple.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the next one. And right away, there's a bit of a sweetness in here.
Mm-hmm.
I find there is a little bit of sweetness, a bit of a caramel, but almost more of a toasted profile to this beer. Would you agree?
Much more so than this one, definitely. And it's, you could stand up to a little bit more.
Definitely. And when we're talking about this beer here, it with the darker malts, these sort of flavors tie in really nicely to roasted vegetables, caramelized onions, that sort of thing.
I could see this with something a little bit spicy.
Definitely, definitely, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more later. This is a Mexican beer, so
Okay.
It's actually an Austrian-style beer in Mexico, but that's a different story.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later. So definitely with the sweetness, port comes to mind.
Okay.
Another neat thing when we have beers that are a bit sweeter is, for example, let's say you're having a hamburger. With a burger, you're talking about one food match. But who just has a plain bun? Usually you want to toss some ketchup on there, you want to toss some relish, and as a general rule, you want the sweetness of your beer to at least match the sweetness in your food. So that's when you want to head for something that has a little bit more caramel to it.
Okay.
And on to the porter.
Now, I have to admit, porter scares me.
Okay.
And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that feel the same way as I do. They see this dark beer, they hear the word porter, and, run in fear.
Because?
It always just sounds to me like it's going to be a very heavy beer that's to me, I think of it as a difficult drink.
It's a difficult drink. Well, that's interesting because I think that if you find the right food to match to a beer,
Yes.
it's a great introduction.
Okay.
Because that really brings out the qualities of the beer and brings out its strengths. Your concerns about the heaviness of a beer, I can see that visually looking at these two beers, obviously this one seems heavier.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about the weight of a beer, and that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later, we're talking about alcohol content.
Okay.
And it's really the alcohol content that is going to affect the weight or the feel of a beer.
Okay.
If you want to avoid a beer that is too heavy or strong, you're going to look at the alcohol content. It'll be very basic. Anything that's above 6, I would say, is going to be perceived as definitely heavier.
Okay.
And those beers also often have the term strong on them, or imperial is a term that's been used a lot to describe something that's heavier. So as we taste this beer, I think you'll notice that it's actually not that heavy at all.
So I can immediately really taste that it's incredibly flavorful. And the smell is incredibly flavorful as well.
And are you getting that astringency from the grains, that sort of chocolatey, that flavor that's coming through?
Definitely. There's a burnt caramel flavor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the sort of caramel edge would be coming probably from the addition of some of these.
Okay.
And the burnt edge is going to tie this really nicely with anything that's barbecue, that has a bit of a char to it. It's going to be delicious with this. A lot of people like darker beers with chocolate or with dessert as sort of an option instead of coffee.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah. So these are ways that we can explore this sort of beer.
I shouldn't be afraid of porter.
No,
No.
there's nothing to be afraid of in the porter. So this is just an overview of what the different malts can contribute, and I did want to add in that there's a color that's kind of between this color and this color. This one, see how this one's sort of a reddish? If you're seeing a beer that's a bit more brown,
Okay.
those beers, for example, mild, English mild, and so on and so forth, the malt profile in those is also has a nutty character to it, and those are just great with mushrooms and sort of heartier pub dishes.
Okay.
You're getting a lot of that hearty flavor coming out. But this is just a guideline and something to explore, and this is just one aspect of beer. So what we're going to do now is move on to hops, which is another major flavor component in beer, and talk about how the different hops can
Hops affect the flavor.
food matching.
Okay, great.